Is our Committee of the Whole, September 18th, 2024. Welcome to everyone. My name is Reba Chambers and I'll be chairing in Chair Zelli's absence. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. And if there are no changes to the agenda, I will consider that approved. We have two items to approve. One is the Metropolitan Council Special Committee of the Whole minutes. And the second one is the approval of the Blue Line Extension Municipal Consent Minutes. For the Special Committee of the Whole minutes, do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved by Wolf and seconded by Morales. Any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Nay? Those minutes are approved. And how about the Blue Line Extension Municipal Consent Minutes? I'll take a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved by Osmond,
Second.
seconded by Morales. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Those minutes are approved. Our first and only item of business for today is the 2024-258 same week item to establish the public hearing date for pathways to removing obstacles to housing for fiscal year 2024 with the application that we made to the U.S. Department of HUD. Lisa.
Thank you,
Rojas.
Madam Chair. Normally, I think I would have Chair Lilligren present these items. I don't see him here today. So as you're chairing it, I think I will just quickly summarize then what we have. The Federal Pathways to Removing Obstacles to Housing or Pro-Housing program is intended to empower communities that are actively taking steps to remove barriers to affordable housing and seeking to increase housing production and lower housing costs for families over the long term. The council received $4 million in the inaugural round of this program just this summer that was offered for fiscal year 2023. And the opportunity to reapply for fiscal year, the 2024 program cycle presents an opportunity to continue and expand on this initial grant award, especially because that $4 million award funded only a portion of our initial $10 million grant request. The grant program requires applicants to make a draft application, a complete draft application available for public comment for a 15-day period, and also to hold a public hearing. Complete applications are due to HUD by October 15th of this year, and posting the application for comment by Sunday, September 22nd, and holding a public hearing on the proposed grant application at the next Community Development Committee meeting on October 7th will allow the council to meet the submittal timeline. The CDC was supportive of this, submitting a second application to the program at their most recent meeting just on Monday. So there is a proposed action for you in the business item, and I will turn back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
I can make a motion if you want me to.
Okay, go ahead, go.
Madam Chair, I would move, I'm reading your thing, that we establish a public hearing date for the pathways to removing obstacles to housing as recommended by staff and as recommended by the CDC meeting as of this week. It's the same week item.
I'll second that.
I heard a second by Councilmember Osmond. Thank you. Lindstrom. Lindstrom. Okay. I should have turned. Any discussion? Before we start, I was at the Community Development Committee meeting, and I'm very happy that we were able to accommodate the deadlines and get this into our next CDC meeting on October 7th, I believe it is. So with that, I will take comments from Commissioner.
Just a ditto on that, with appreciation to the staff for the work that you all did to make certain that we were able to anticipate and be ready to make this application, squeezing all of that work into the deadlines that's required. Thank you. Very supportive of this.
Thank you. If I may, I would just really like to thank Sarah Berkey, our housing senior manager, for all of her work on this, and Maya Guerrero-Combs, who spent a lot of time doing the logic puzzle and figuring out, can we even meet the deadlines to do this work? So it's really important, really glad to have the staff that we have really leading these efforts.
Any other comments or discussion? Thought I saw a couple more hands. Seeing none, there has been a motion, it has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, that motion passes. Thank you. So we have an information item to talk about a very interesting topic, which is cybersecurity and the training that is planned. And do we have a presenter for that today?
We do, Madam Chair. As our individuals come up to present, and I see Eric's going to take the lead here today, supported by the cast of thousands in the development, I know, I would just impress a couple of things. We face security threats from threat actors on a nearly daily, if not more than daily basis, and I'm sure Eric will take some time to scare everyone a little bit about that. As council members, you are high-profile targets for those threat actors because it's easier to find your names, and impersonating a council member can get better results than impersonating a new intern, for example, in an area where people may not know them. And so, as we think about the importance of cybersecurity training, it's not academic, it's practical, and we have had threats that have involved impersonation of individuals around this table. We anticipate that it will continue. And I want to just give a shout out to Gretchen and Eric for their work to come into the organization, make assessments, and then also ensure that we're architecting a type of system in which we're being more protective. And if someone does get in, they have less access through multiple doors, as has sometimes been the case in the past. Finally, there's been conversation about making sure all council members receive this briefing. So for those not here today, there's a follow-up memo that's going to go out to them. We will be scheduling time for the same presentation being set up with each of them. That work is underway as well. So take solace in ensuring that that we make sure we are all strong in our cybersecurity training.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that all of our council members will be able to get this information and have that follow-up. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Mr. White, or Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Regional Administrator O'Connor.
I never thought about that. It's Miss White and Mr. Brown.
Right?
That's pretty good.
There's a movie, right? We just need Mr. Payne.
It's a Quentin Tarantino film.
Reservoir Dogs. Council members, this session is for all of you, so please stop if you have questions along the way. I'm gonna approach this from the perspective that maybe all of you haven't been as steeped in personal information security, so we'll just talk through some of these topics and want to make sure that your questions are answered so that you can practice information security safely. I'm gonna kind of jump around on some of these slides. We'll cover all of the topics, but I want to ground us a little bit here first, and I want to hit the items that are the most important from an information security perspective in your personal lives. Regional Administrator O'Connor alluded to the fact that we're under attack every day here at the council. We get about 30 to 40,000 emails a day, and over half of those are either non-business relevant, so spam or phishing emails. So we're constantly under attack. There's targeted phishing attacks, which means the malicious actors are picking on a particular group or person or persons and sending them targeted email to compromise those accounts due to the nature of the work that we do here at the council. But again, this is for all of you, more so on the personal side, not necessarily related to what we do as a business. And we can certainly cover those topics too, but I want to make sure you get this information. So the part that we're going to start out with here that I like to go to as the most important is credit protection and freezing your credit. And the reason why is if a malicious actor were to get your social security number and open credit in your name and impersonate you, it's really hard, it's expensive and time consuming to unwind or unring that bell. It's really hard to get a new social security number, and that damage to your credit could already be out there, and it takes a long time to repair that damage. So what we like to talk about from an information security perspective is how can you as an individual take steps to protect that credit? And there's a couple of things that you can do. And the first is to freeze your credit. So there are 3 credit reporting bureaus. That's the ones that you've all heard of: Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. And then Innovis is the 4th reporting bureau. And Innovis is the bureau that reports out on, if you've ever got those letters that say, oh, you're pre-approved for this loan or this credit for a car or what have you, that data is coming from Innovis. So we recommend that you freeze your credit with each of these bureaus. Credit is open by default, so when you're young and you get that social security number, that is open, meaning there's nothing preventing a malicious actor from opening credit in your name or that person's name. So we recommend freezing that for yourself or your children or people that you're responsible for. Again, this is on the personal side. So to freeze it, you can work with each of those bureaus individually. There's online forms. They ask you a series of questions to authenticate who you are, and then you can initiate that freeze. And when you do want to go out and open credit, mortgage, what have you, you can unfreeze that credit. And I recommend when you are asked to unfreeze your credit that you ask which reporting bureau they're going to use to assess your credit. And then you just unfreeze the credit for a period of time, maybe 7 days, maybe 14 days, when you're working with that particular lender and the particular bureau or bureaus that they're working with. So I also recommend just some simple things: not carrying your credit or your social security card with you. Probably all memorized that by now. We could ask Regional Administrator O'Connor his driver's license number, he could tell us that.
I thought everybody knew their driver's license number, and I'll go on the record and say I'm weird. I found this out a couple weeks ago. I know.
Weird.
Thank you for confirming that.
I don't know my driver's license, but I do know my library card number.
See, we all got one.
I know none of it. I don't even know people's phone numbers anymore. It's all on my phone.
Don't give away that library card number. It's very dangerous. Sorry, Eric.
You're good. So put it in a safe place. Go through each of the bureaus to freeze your credit, and then the file taxes early. That's because we've seen over the years, if a malicious actor does have access to your social security number, they may try to file taxes on your behalf early, or they may try to do it. If you do it early, you're going to get that in before someone else does that on your behalf that you don't want them to. And then there's the free annual credit report checks that you can do. I think it's actually now more often than annually, you can do it for free. And that's just a good way to see, well, what credit do I have that's open in my name? And just verifying that you agree with everything on that report. The Social Security earnings statement, that's something that gets mailed out annually. You can review that to make sure it's accurate. And then you can turn on the mobile alerts from banks or credit cards for every transaction that occurs, if that's something that you want to do. The way I look at it is freezing that credit, that's the best thing I can do. If somebody gets a credit card number of mine that I have and that's compromised, well, that's pretty easy to change that credit card out. I know, Ann, you don't necessarily agree with that, but we had a discussion earlier where Ann had memorized her credit card number and had to get changed, and Ann wasn't happy about that. Any questions on the, yeah?
Yeah, I just want to ask the obvious question. When you freeze your credit, are you freezing the level of credit you have, or are you freezing the use of the credit? What exactly are you freezing?
Yeah, great question. You're freezing the use of the credit. So regardless of what your score is, you're freezing that credit, meaning new credit cannot be opened in your name with that social security number.
But you're free to use it
You're absolutely free to use it, and if you have loans already open in your name, mortgage, car loan, what have you, there's no impact to that. It's only net new credit.
Okay.
Any other questions? I do have one.
Sure.
And that is, there are a lot of fake websites out there. How do you know that you're going to the right website?
If you don't know, don't click.
For these bureaus in particular,
Those bureaus.
yeah, great question, and I believe at the end of this, I have links to each of the credit bureaus. Might be on this slide if I don't. What I'll do is I can send it to the council here after. I actually don't think I have it on here, but the Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, and Novus.com, I believe is the URL. So Experian.com, Equifax.com, TransUnion.com, and Novus.com. I would maybe avoid the Google search and then clicking on the first link. That could be, I'm not saying that is a malicious site, but sometimes malicious actors will promote fake sites in those paid for advertisements. So, great question.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go to passwords now, and this is kind of a fun little exercise here, don't have to do it now. But as we transition into email security and password security, from an email perspective, that is how we interact on the internet with third-party sites. So we all have logins, likely with our email addresses. And this is a way to determine if your email account has been previously involved in a breach. There's a website called Have I Been Pwned? It's there at the bottom. It's curated by Troy Hunt, a security researcher, and it's pulled together I think we're up to billions now of previously compromised accounts that were in breaches over the last couple of years. So, the Ford breach, the Adobe breach, just thousands of breaches. His group has curated this list, and you can type in your personal email address, you can type in your council email address if you wanted to, and see if that account has been involved previously in a breach. If you've had an account for a while, it's highly likely that it's going to come up in this, and that's okay, right? It's knowing is half the battle. Then it's the aftermath of that is that account or those accounts that you have, how are they, the credentials to those accounts? So let's say you're using a Gmail account and that account's been involved in 5 breaches. Well, were you reusing the same password for those breaches that the account was involved with? And that's the shift that we want to make, is we want to get to a one-to-one relationship between account and password. So we don't want to reuse passwords because it's highly likely that at some point in time, all of us in this room are going to be involved in a breach. It's not our fault, it happens. Data that we entrust third parties with, they're compromised, and then our account is compromised. That has nothing to do with our personal security, how good our security is. So if you were involved in a breach, what we like to say is keep that one-to-one relationship, and we'll talk about a password manager next, about how to keep that one-to-one relationship. It avoids the things in the corporate world where corporations have been adhering to an older methodology of changing passwords every 90 days. And that leads to the spring 2024, sometimes with an exclamation point, or summer 2024, fall 2024, so on. Because the corporations are saying you need to change your password every 90 days, it's really tough to make up a new password that's easy to remember every 90 days. So we're just doing something that's easy to remember because we have to change it so often. So new guidance by NIST, the National Institute of I think it's Science and Technology, Standards and Technology, has issued guidance that you only want to change it once a year, or if there was that the account was involved in a breach. And to use longer passwords, I think we've got a graphic in here, right here, maybe hard to read, but essentially the graphic is just saying, come up with a passphrase rather than a password. Traditionally, we've used pet's name, kid name, and maybe the year, and then maybe $ exclamation or whatever. And those are really, really easy to guess, especially with social media and maybe some of that information out there in social media. Dog's name, kid's name, what have you. So you go to this site, you check it out, you see if you've been involved in a breach, and if you have, it's okay. Then it's just the work of going through and creating that one-to-one relationship between a password and the site. The second thing that you can do is add multi-factor authentication. So you've all probably heard of that MFA, multi-factor authentication, which is something that you have, something you are, like a fingerprint or a facial scan, and with our mobile devices, something you know, password. So nowadays, the shift is away from SMS or text-based authentication, where it used to be we'd get a text message with a code in it, sometimes we still do, and then we type that in. A little more secure to have the authenticator app on your mobile device, and then you're either typing in the message that shows up on your authenticator app, or there's that 6-digit code that changes every minute, and then you're typing that into the website.
Madam Chair, just to confirm, everybody's got that, right, here at the council for our emails, because if you don't, you should. Okay, just because, I'm just making sure that that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, you can't get in anymore if you don't have the.
Right, so I think we're all familiar, just at least with our email here at the council.
We want you
email.
to really work for it.
Yeah. I gave up.
You couldn't get in anymore without it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we know what that is.
Great.
Yeah.
And that's what you can set that up on your bank accounts, other personal accounts. You have the option to set that up in most cases. Sometimes they force you to use that.
I've been doing that a lot.
And these are some multi-factor authentication applications. We use the Microsoft Authenticator here at the council, but Google's got one, Okta, LastPass. So I'm gonna go back to email security here. We're gonna continue talking a little bit more about email security. So we talked about, well, can I see if I've been involved in a breach? And then secondly, a little bit more information on personal email security and email hygiene. So most likely everybody's heard of Google for email, so Gmail, Yahoo, Microsoft's Hotmail, and using those because they're a free service. It's great they're a free service. The reason why they're free is they're mining our data to produce ads that can be used against us or for us as a population. And personal choice, if you want to participate in that data mining exercise, I think those are great for signing up for, maybe like a grocery store account where they're going to maybe send you some coupons or some other advertising things. Not so much your maybe private personal email address that you share with friends and family. One that you share with friends and family, maybe think about having a bit more of a private email application. I list a couple here. Proton Mail is one that's hosted in Switzerland. There's no, they encrypt all of the data that's stored with them, and there's no ability for data to be extradited back to the US. Not that you necessarily care about that, but more so from the perspective of they really take data information security seriously, and they offer a email service that's free for a small amount of email. You can pay for it if you have more mail. They have a VPN service, and they have a storage for data storage, kind of like a Google Drive or something like that, but it's all encrypted. So these services are not going to mine your data for information. So I recommend using something like this for that personal email with friends and family, and then for accounts that you know you're gonna get spam or additional unwanted emails, that's great for Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail, your pick there. Any questions so far on email security? This slide here just is, you can sign up, they're free, these email addresses like with Gmail, so you can create one for the purposes of shopping rewards or things like that if you wanted to. The interesting thing about Gmail is it doesn't check for periods, so you can do a little bit of rule manipulation, like if you wanted to put a period somewhere in there. It's not going to stop the mail from getting to you, but you could filter on anything with a period is maybe a mail that you don't necessarily want because it's subscription email to some sort of ad service. You can do a little filtering that way. Talk a little bit about VPNs. Maybe you've heard of VPN before, maybe not. VPN, virtual private network. We use them here at the council for employees that are remote that need to get back into services here at the office. We have a VPN service. You can also set up a VPN service for personal use at home. If you want a little bit more protection and a little bit more privacy, a VPN would give you that by creating a VPN essentially is an encrypted tunnel from your computer to a computer in a data center, and your ISP or your internet service provider can't necessarily see that traffic. It's a way to add a layer of security, not necessary, but I just bring it up as a talking point in case somebody wants some more information on how they might leverage a VPN or why they might leverage a VPN. The thing about VPNs, there are lots of VPNs out there. I would advise looking for a reputable service. Proton, Nord, private internet access are reputable services. They cost a nominal amount of money, and the reason why that's good is the ones that are free are mining your data for their own purposes, not for your own.
Eric, so we use VPN here when I'm using your council device, but we also have the added layer that we block traffic from outside the US because there's so much predominant traffic outside the US that's coming to us that's malicious. So if you're traveling and you're like, why doesn't my device work anymore? It's by design and intention, so. Just so you know.
And if you are traveling remote for work, we can open that up, and we've done that for people if we know in advance.
For a short period of time.
So on the password theme and the email theme, I'm gonna transition to talking about how we store and care for our password. So we talked about maintaining that one-to-one relationship. Web browsers offer that feature to store your password in the web browser. Please don't do that. The web browsers are great portals to get to the internet, but they're poor password managers. So there are some great third-party password managers that are either a nominal cost or free for a small set of users. But you really want to avoid storing it in, pick your browser of choice. It's gonna pop up and say, hey, do you want to store this there? They'll do the same thing with credit card information. I'd store my credit card information there before I stored my password in there. Credit card's the bank's responsibility, the password's my responsibility.
So if you use the password manager in your phone, is that okay, or?
I like the password manager in the phone. I can speak on behalf of Apple a little bit more than I do the web browser. The password manager on your phone, it's going to be encrypted. I'm speaking on behalf on the Apple side. It's going to be encrypted, and you're going to need a second form of authentication to get into that. Usually it's facial recognition. Nowadays it used to be fingerprint on the Apple device. But you can use that. The way I do it is I use for just kind of disposable or maybe some throwaway passwords, I'll use that password in my phone, that password manager in my phone. And then if it's not really a priority account, I'll just copy that password that it gives me into my password manager. And that way I have it in my password manager as well, so I can get to it if I'm maybe on my computer and I'm browsing to that site, not going through my phone. And here are some password managers. There's an exhaustive list of password managers. I listed a few here, and some of these are paid for services. Bitwarden is an open source password manager. It's free for, I think, 1 or 2 users. For families, it might be a nominal fee, a couple dollars a month. The way they encrypt their passwords is pretty good. They double salt them, which probably doesn't mean anything. But they do a great job with encryption. And that's accessible. So if you're on a guest computer, not your own computer, that's password is stored on the internet, on the web, you can get to it, or you can get to it on your phone through a mobile app, or you could get to it through your browser. So it's okay to store your passwords in your browser if it is in a password manager, but not in the browser password manager. So there's a difference there. And these other ones, LastPass, 1Password. If you go to the Have I Been Pwned site, 1Password, I believe, is the one that is partnered with Have I Been Pwned. And one of the added features that they claim is that when you put a password in there, they will look up to see if it's been involved in a breach. I think a lot of those password managers do that. We do that here at the council as well. We have some technology that if you change your password and it's a password that's been involved in a breach, it's not gonna let you choose that password. Any questions on these?
Just one quick question, Madam Chair. So you've moved a little bit on password managers. I have the benefit of hearing you present similar presentations over 5 years. You seem stronger and more supportive of using them than in the past. Have they gotten better over time, just in preventing threat actors from? There was a time when I used a password manager and you were telling me not to. I'll lay my cards on the table.
They have gotten a lot better, and when we think about the amount of accounts that we are responsible for as individuals, I think the last I counted, I was up to like 220 or something, and it just is nearly impossible to remember all of those passwords and come up with unique and creative passwords for each one. So the password manager there is a great place to store those. For those of us who, my mom included in this, maybe not as technology savvy or not comfortable with that level of technology, writing it down and storing it in a notebook is an okay alternative, not something that if you are technically savvy, this is a safer way to go. But if you're not, better than using, dog's birthday and name 100 times, better to write it down and keep it in that password book somewhere safe in your house. And some of these password managers have been involved in breaches before, but with this, you only have to remember one long password to get in, and then all of your passwords are there. So some people say, well, is it a risk? Because if this password manager gets breached, then all of my passwords are public record, so to speak. And yes, that is a known risk, but I think an acceptable risk, and you will know about it if one of these password managers is breached, and then you can go through and start making the changes to your passwords. It's less likely that these will be breached, but nothing's infallible.
Thanks.
So we'll talk about that. I'm gonna transition a little bit to offline data protections, and then we'll talk a little bit about mobile as well. So on the offline data protections, this is just something to be aware of as individuals as we move about through society how we're displaying information that could potentially be used in ways that are unintended by us. So simple as you go to the mailbox, you have your mail, set it on the seat of your car, and now you're in the store. Well, there's information there that you may not wish to be available to the general public. So putting the mail face down or anything that is private to you in a way that's not visible to the general public. Not to say that being public figures, the public can't get information about you, but just openly displaying it is a conversation point that we like to have with people, of just being conscious of what you're doing there. When you put your trash out, if you live in an area where the trash is moved out to the curb for pickup, certainly recommend, if you can, do that the day of the trash pickup. There are people that, do dumpster diving and will look in trash for confidential information. So you can limit that time window by putting it out the day of, not the night before. And then there's also if you put it out the night before you go on vacation, you're away for a couple of days, those bins are on the street, it just says, oh, somebody's not home. So having a neighbor move those in or something like that is just something to be mindful of. Transition and talk a little bit about cellular. So this time of year, I think we're all starting to get those cellular texts about voting and polling and other maybe unwanted communications that we're getting from our phone numbers being publicly available. A little different for those of you who are public figures and your phone number is out widely. Maybe consider that you have a different phone number for your friends and family than you do for the general public, and potentially using services that could provide you a phone number to use for, the Caribou Coffee is my favorite one. If you go to any of these Caribous, you walk up to the Caribou and the first thing they say is, what's your phone number? And people shouting out the phone numbers, and they're putting that information in. Not really, it's okay if you're all right with other people in the vicinity hearing that information about you, but just something, again, to be mindful of. And I use a completely made up phone number that I've used for years in that Caribou setting. If anybody called, I have no idea where it would go, but I just use that same number.
That person is so sick of getting a free number.
Madam Chair, I have to say, I had somebody giving out my home phone number that didn't have my home phone number for years to like siding companies and, anybody that they didn't want to talk to on the phone. So
They would give it out.
Don't do that.
I think mine was a real old work mobile that I had from like 15 years ago. Yeah. But you can get a cellular masking service, like there's one called Burner that you can use, and you can turn that over. Recommend that for maybe anybody who's in a setting where you might not be comfortable giving out their primary phone number. You can turn over that Burner phone number. It's a subscription, or you can just one-time use if you had a short window that you wanted to provide an alternative phone number. Also, Google has a Google Voice, which is free. You can get a Google phone number and leverage that. That will get texts and voice calls. So that's a great option as well. Talked about credit. And then the last thing that we've got here are a couple of checklists that you can go through. We're coming up on Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is October. And these are just some good talking points to have with your family. One of the things that I like to talk about more recently is we'll call it the grandparent scheme of child is in Mexico, grandparent or parent, what have you, gets the phone call, little Timmy is been kidnapped, and if you pay $2,000, little Timmy is gonna be set free. So malicious actors can gather that information by social media accounts and then stitch together a persona and use that information to socially engineer you. I recommend having the conversations. October's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's a good time to have these conversations with our family and just say, hey, if this were to come up, what would we do? Kind of a tabletop type of exercise to do. And there's technology out there that is really good at voice cloning. So you're all public figures, you've all given public speeches. 30 seconds or less of conversation from your voice can, with about 99% accuracy, somebody will type in a sentence and it'll replay and it'll sound really like you. So just think if you're on the receiving end of that grandparent scheme, it's really easy to just socially engineer somebody using that. So just having those conversations and being aware of what technology is out there these days. So a couple checklists here, freezing your credit. In that NerdWallet article is a good one to go to, and that lists all of the links to the credit bureaus. So Madam Chair, I think you'd asked for those. That's at that NerdWallet article, but I'll also send out the exact links to them too. We talked about the browser security, MFA. We didn't talk about cookie detectors, and that might be beyond the scope of this conversation. We can certainly have more conversations later around ad blockers and cookies, but something that you can look at. And then the next links here are pretty interesting. It's about what data these companies have on you. So you can go and you can find what data Google has about you, and you can go and request that your house, the front of your house on Google Maps is blurred out if you wanted to, but you can also request that Google and these other entities delete the data they have about you. Anything else on here? Yeah, so you can just kind of look at this. We're talking a little bit about the VPN service. You can see the Have I Been Pwned link is at the bottom there. And then the last checklist, a little bit of a deeper dive on the privacy settings of the popular social media sites that we use, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, what have you. Any questions?
This is a lot of good information, Ryan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Could you give an example of some of the most commonly effective, so as organizations set up their own internal, like I'll call them phishing schemes, and test and prod employees and their own defenses, like what are some of the ones that you have seen that are most effective in showing our vulnerabilities?
So there's two examples that I can think of. We may see these again here at the council, but I think the most successful and Regional Administrator O'Connor is referring back to a time that we shared together at a different public entity, the credentials for a burrito, as we called it. So we launched a phishing campaign involving Chipotle, and that was our most popular one, where if people got the link, they clicked on the link, they entered their credentials, they were registered to win or get a gift card to Chipotle, and that was a really successful campaign. The one that I felt the most bad about was we did one for, what's the amusement park in Shakopee there?
Valley Fair.
Valley Fair, we did the Valley Fair, 4 tickets to Valley Fair. And a person, they came back, they had fallen for the phishing link, and then they had told their family that they won 4 tickets to Valley Fair. And then they had to go back and tell their family like, no, it's, you know, a phishing email, we didn't actually win the tickets. But that one was probably the most heart-wrenching one. But we try to do ones that are relevant. So as we get into holiday season with packages, we'll do some around UPS or FedEx around packages where you'll get the notification that says, oh, you know, you need to click on this and confirm a package or whatever it is. But the malicious actors are getting really, really good with the ChatGPT and AI technologies that we all have at our disposal to craft the emails to make them look really targeted and really good. So we've also had to step up our phishing campaigns to make them look realistic or more realistic.
Thank you.
So Eric, you and I had some conversations about that. So you get the email, there's a link in it or whatever, it looks legit. What are some of the steps you can take that we've talked about to say,
Sure.
maybe this isn't?
So if you get the email in that email where you think, well, is this a legitimate email? And I'll talk about it council side and non-council side first. If you hover over that link in the email, there'll be a pop-up that will show what it's actually going to. And in some cases, it's going to what doesn't look like the URL on the email. So if it's supposed to be going to Microsoft, but it's this long random string of letters and characters, that's malicious, that's not good. You can look at the headers of the email too, like where the email's coming from. And you can look for, it used to be, well, you could kind of tell that the email didn't look really good, but with AI technology today, those emails can be crafted to look pretty exact. So the other thing, if you do happen to click on the link and it takes you to a site, if you look at the URL string where it says HTTPS and then the link in the top bar there, look to make sure that if you think that you're going to cubfoods.com, that it's actually cubfoods.com. It's not cubfoods.xyzabc.something.com. Because it's nearly impossible for the threat actor to fake the actual URL, but they will slide in, you know, a Cub Foods prefix or suffix somewhere in there. On the council side, Gretchen and I have been hard at work here for a number of months putting technologies in place at the council that help to protect us from getting those emails through. They still do slip through the cracks. Same thing in place here where if you hover over it and it looks different, it's okay. You know, don't click on it. We have a report a suspicious phishing email button, and if you click on that, it runs it through an application that re-inspects that email, and then it'll send you an email back that says this is safe, or this is spam, or this is a malicious email. And if it is a malicious email, it'll go through and pull it out of anybody else's mailbox that received that same message.
How do you get to that again?
On your council email, so there'll be at the top of your email bar, there'll be a report a suspicious email button, like a report phishing.
That's right.
So if you click on that report phishing, it'll take you to that. And we're in the process of launching a new integrated phishing campaign with the software that Regional Administrator O'Connor was talking about, where we're able to do some more of those sample testing. And that's integrated with that phishing button. So if you do get one of those sample tests and you click on the button, it'll say, congratulations, you spotted a fish. If you don't click on the phishing button, but you click on a link in that email, it'll show you why it was a malicious email. So that's kind of cool too.
Well, what happens if we just ignore them and don't listen?
That's great too.
That works. Can I just add to that though? Because you've taught me this over time. I mean, it works. What happens is if someone is quick to the jump at clicking the phishing button, it allows the security within the organization to shut it down and even pull it out of other accounts. So if you just delete it and don't click on it, we'll take that every day of the week. If someone somewhere though is actively clicking, this might be junk, it allows for them to start to pull it quicker out of inboxes to avoid the risk of people clicking on it. Did I get that right?
100%, yeah, 100%.
And can you explain why, say you got a malicious email that was from me, or you thought it was from me, why you wouldn't just reply to it and say, why are you sending this to me?
Sure, so then that essentially gives credibility to the threat actors that they have essentially a live conversation. Most of the phishing that we're getting, even the targeted phishing, is not by a person sitting in their basement cranking these out. It's automated and they're sending them out to hundreds of thousands of individuals globally. So the response back then triggers a higher level of automated response and puts that email in a separate category, so to speak, where then they're going to go through and do more to socially engineer their way into the organization. They're doing some pretty sophisticated things these days where they may have, so they'll launch a phishing campaign, it'll have a live link in the campaign to some malicious content, but they won't make that link live because they know it has to run through email scanning engines, right? Just about every organization has some form of email security, so that link won't be live. So when it goes through the phishing engine's like, okay, well, there's nothing there, I'm not gonna do anything with it, pass it on to the inbox, but a half hour later, an hour later, that link is live, so when it's in the user's inbox, they click on it, then something malicious could happen. What Regional Administrator O'Connor was saying of reporting that email instead of just deleting it, which, deleting is fine, that's great. If you do report that, then it's gonna re-inspect that email and it'll catch that, oh, it was actually a malicious link that wasn't live when it went through. So they are, just as we're on the defensive side trying to come up with ways to prevent these from coming into the organization, there's lots of smart people coming up with ways to get them into the organization. So the malicious emails nowadays are smart enough to know that they were spun up in a sandbox or a virtual environment to test them and not an actual end user computer. It can tell the difference between that end user computer and that sandbox environment. And if it's spun up in a sandbox environment, it doesn't detonate, it just, it essentially remains dormant.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I was saying this earlier, but it was a couple of years ago. And you know how we get our statements, it says, you got your payment for doing this very hard work we do for the amount that we make. But in mine, it was saying that it was going to not my bank. So I contacted council and somebody pretended to be me and that they had the email string and that I had changed my bank and my account number and the money went somewhere else. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. And it wasn't me, but I caught it when I got some auto reply that something was triggered, my payment went, and I'm like, that's not where it should go. So, that's why, to your point, if a council member's emailing us, and I think it was somebody newer too that was managing that part of payroll and just, oh, it's a council member, I better make sure I get it updated right away and not checking.
Thank you for that real world example.
We had an attorney check their direct deposit the second their money should have been deposited in a place Eric and I were at before, and it was it wasn't there right away when it was supposed to be, and they right away asked a question, and it prevented a major breach of payroll diversion across multiple individuals. And to this moment, I don't know if you catch it, but for someone checking their stuff, it's very consistent with your story.
For real. Yeah, and if you don't see it in your bank account.
It's really scary.
It is, yeah. So I don't know what the backside of all that was, because they fixed it on our end, I don't know where all the money ended up going, but it was not a lot of money, let's just say that in my case. But that was just one where somebody pretended to be me.
City of Cottage Grove a couple of years ago lost close to $1 million in a construction project that very same way, where the malicious actor stood up a lookalike domain that was very similar to the contractor's domain that had actually won the bid, issued a ACH change, and they siphoned off, I think it was close to $1 million. They were able to recover over half of that. That was just something in our backyard. And there's so a lot of what we talked about today are technical controls. There's the administrative controls, which are more of the policy and the procedures, and that's what's gonna catch that activity from happening. So when somebody does put in an ACH request, making sure that the person initiating the request goes through the process of picking up the phone and calling the person to verify that they did actually put that request in.
And Madam Chair, you know, this is kind of coming out of management, you know, it's really good personal stuff, but the enterprise stuff is deep and wide here at my council. So I know you're all doing this work, which again, I think we have the A-team on the job. And I think that even, you know, thinking of new employees or certainly new council members when we come on, this should be part of onboarding, I think, for sure, going forward. And I think that as you train, you know, your teams throughout the year too, remind, oh, new things happening, here's updates, maybe just even now and then doing a virtual meeting for substance of council members to just in a half hour, just get what the updates are so it stays top of mind, because this is great and there's all kinds of links and stuff, and if it's in an email, it's easy to get buried, but you know, the more we can be reminded and updated on things, I think the better off the enterprises and this council will be, because we're all in it together.
I just wanna add to that, there is no stupid question. Like Eric would talk security with you all day long, so would I. So please feel free to email us if you have any kind of concern. We wanna be here to help you, and hopefully it's, you know, not a problem, but if it is, that's what we're here to take care of.
Councilmember.
One of those stupid questions. I often just delete and don't report. And I was just looking, and I don't see a report phishing. I've seen it before, I know, but I was just looking at regular emails coming in, and I don't see a report phishing. I see a report spam, but not a report. So is it just for those suspicious emails that the system might flag?
It should show you, and the reason why it might not be showing up on the mobile device, I've got to go back and look, is the mobile interface is slightly different from the interface that we might have on a laptop, where it would be there. But I know for a fact that within the next couple of weeks, we're coming out with a new phishing button that works on the mobile platform as well. So you should, if you don't see it today, it will be there, and I can follow up with this council as we roll that out, just to make sure that it's on all of your devices, mobile platform or laptop.
I'll definitely use it, thank you.
It is on the mobile platform.
Okay, you're seeing it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, I'm not, so I don't know what's up.
Just gotta hit the 3 little buttons
Yeah,
when they send the email.
it says
and
report
all-
junk.
Wow.
But it doesn't say that, so I'll give you my vote. We'll figure
Good
it out.
questions. Any more questions?
And Madam Chair, I'm not gonna go into it deep because we're in a public meeting, but how often we change passwords, I wanna talk to you about that afterwards.
Great.
Thank you. This was very informative. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to get this very detailed presentation on cybersecurity and being safe, especially as public officials. And I feel empowered. I think our council members probably do too, because now we know who to go to. We have a lot of really great links, and this can also help us in our private lives.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
For all the work that you do every day to keep us safe and protected.
Thank you for having us, Madam Chair, council members.
Do you have anything else to say before we adjourn, Ryan?
Madam Chair, we have folks representing the council out at the fly-in out in DC on transportation related issues, talking about a lot of the regional and comprehensive plans that we have going on with our partners, and meeting with our delegation as we talk about important work here locally. So always an important event, I know, for statewide for transportation issues, but the council has a leadership role there. And then I'll just end by saying, don't click the link if you don't know what it is. That's my final word. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. And,
I'm not on the agenda of the cow, so I will say nothing.
okay, well, thank you. I think with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.